professionals have taken their talents from the 305 to the 503 to make the finest flour out there. Do you want more information? Here's what you got to do. Visit DutchVF.com. That's DutchVF.com. Or follow them on Instagram at Dutch Valley Farms. And now, today's episode. Ethan Skolnick back with a crew of 5 on the floor. I've got right next to me, that's Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. And then next to him, Alphonse Sidney, just about to tape an episode of Light Skinned Opinions, or as he always says, record an episode. Alphonse Sidney, you can follow at Alf954. He's the outgoing president of Heat Twitter. We're going to have a new election. We're going to find somebody better. So that's my promise to you by sometime. I know that look on your face. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
Why do they have to be better? Why does that have to be better? I don't like that.
You didn't do anything. Your reign, Alf, essentially.
Conflict of interest.
Right. I mean, your reign essentially started with what? Dwayne Wade leaving? Right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I presided over like the worst stretch of Heat basketball in 20 years.
Right. So you're out.
None of that had anything to do with me. I didn't make any of those decisions, by the way.
Some say you're to blame for the summers of 2016 and 17.
That's right. Yeah. Tyler Johnson contract, all on you.
I negotiated that. What of it?
We're going to make Heat basketball great again. Here's what we're going to do. We have been accused, and I never have been accused of this before. We have been accused of being too positive. And we actually have an episode. We have a couple episodes coming out. We just did one on Dion Waiters that you should check out. That's over 2,500 downloads in about 12 hours. So obviously you guys are interested in Dion Waiters. We've got an episode with Eric Reed coming out. I asked him the 5 things he's looking forward to coming into the season. It's Eric Reed. It's me. Obviously that was positive. And then we did a predictions episode, which we will release just before the game. So as you're driving to Heat Memphis on Wednesday night for the Heat season opener, you can check out that episode. So we're going to flip the script a little bit here. We're going to talk about worst case scenarios for the Miami Heat. Worst case scenarios. I'm always told I'm too negative on the Dolphins and too positive on the Heat. So we're going to go the other direction here. And I'm going to give you guys some options and let you guys kind of tell me what are the possibilities that this actually happens. So let's start here. When Jimmy Butler was acquired, one of the concerns with Jimmy Butler was what kind of a teammate he would be, how he would interact with everybody else, whether he would get frustrated the way he got in Minnesota, the way he got in Chicago, to a degree he got in Philadelphia, particularly with his head coach, Brett Brown. We haven't seen any evidence of that so far. There's a love story with him and Tyler Hero. He seems to love Erik Spoelstra. He's getting up at 3 a.m. to go to the gym. But what do you think would make Jimmy Butler turn here, guys? Like, what is the worst case scenario for Jimmy Butler this year where maybe this honeymoon period, which we've seen, doesn't last an entire season? Alex.
Then Alex ducks out the way.
Alex left. Alf. We'll go to Alf.
Professional screw up Alex Toledo back at it again. I guess it would have to be something like a 10-15 start. Something where you're getting close to that December deadline when you can start trading people, and he just looks around and says, this isn't the team that he signed up for. We're talking about injuries to Justice Winslow, injuries to Goran Dragic, Kelly Olynyk missing extended amount of time, Bam Adebayo missing some time, where things just seem to fall apart early, or these guys just don't click the way we think they're going to click. I don't think he'll take it personally against any of the guys that they're not working hard, because I feel like everybody that's on this roster right now that isn't suspended is a hard worker. I don't think they have any problems with the work ethic or with Jimmy when it comes in that aspect. But if they get off to a really slow start and it comes to December, they're 25, 30 games in and it's just not working, I could see him looking at Pat Riley and saying, okay, what are you going to do about this?
Alex?
Yeah, so I think the other thing is if they start off missing a lot of threes and they start off having an offense that's subpar, which I think is entirely possible, things could go bad. I still think they're going to be a pretty good offense. I kind of have them somewhere around the middle of the league, somewhere around 15, 16. But if things start going off where, Tyler Hero's not hitting these threes, Winslow starts off not being able to hit any jumpers, it might get tough, man. But I'm not really expecting that.
One of the things that we've seen so far is, like, everybody's developing a consensus on this team. Like, we just put out some predictions. I don't think you guys gave yours, but we had like 8 or 9 guys in 5 reasons, and everybody's between 47 and 50 wins, which is amazing. I don't know if they're all taking their cue from us because we've all kind of said that on this particular podcast. So I think maybe it's a little bit self-fulfilling at this point where we're kind of leading that and then others are kind of jumping on. But as I said, the number in Vegas is 43 and we're talking 47 to 50. But I want to turn this to Erik Spoelstra then. If we're all defenders of Erik Spoelstra, okay? We all jumped on Dan Dockich for those stupid comments to George Sedano in the booth. We all believe at the very least he's a top 5 coach in the NBA. But there is a contingent of Heat fans that's pretty vocal but small that still doesn't buy into Spo, that thinks that he has not overachieved with talent. You hear the thing all the time. He hasn't won a playoff series, without a superstar, which you can pretty much say that about every coach in the NBA. What is the worst case scenario for Spoelstra this year? What do you think? And I'll start with Alex on this one. What could happen with Erik that would make Heat fans go, oh, either he's not as good as we thought he was, or he's pumped up to be, or I was right about Erik Spoelstra and he's just not all that?
Again, I think everything that lies within this Heat season has to do with how good the offense is. If they get off to a bad start and they just cannot fix the offense, people are going to start to hate on Spo. They're going to be like, you got the all-star playmaker that you needed. He's a two-way all-star. You got everything you wanted, right? You've been saying this whole time for years that you have pieces that you can throw around an all-star, and now you have them. So if they get off to a bad start on offense, it's going to be tough for Erik. And specifically, if their defense isn't top 10 at least, man, the Heat fans are going to start coming after him for real. We might get that website back that tried to get Spo fired in 2010.
Firespo.com. What's not still up?
One of the darkest moments in Heat history, Heat fan history.
Well, it was, and Erik has said himself that if he was coaching anywhere else, he probably would have been fired 3 times. The 2010 when they got LeBron, 9-8, and then losing the 2011 finals. And as I always said, it's a good thing he worked for this organization because he's still here. But you mentioned the defense. I want to go to Alpha on this. I'm trying to think back to the complaints about Erik last year. All right. One of the complaints was he didn't find a rotation the entire season. So we'll do this rapid fire, Alf. Do you think there's any chance that happens? That he just doesn't find a rotation? That we're in March and he's still searching.
Well, with Erik Spoelstra, there's always a chance that happens because he likes to experiment. He likes to play around with things. He likes to throw Duncan Robinson in the starting lineup in preseason. And then on the other side, he gets really set in his rotation. So because a certain guy is always the 7th guy in the game, he will throw somebody else into the starting lineup to not mess up the sequence of guys coming in. So a lot of times, because of Spo's, half the time his experimental personality and then the other time his rigidness, like you'll see some really awkward lineups. We saw it all preseason. They never got off to a good start. And that's because half the time nobody was guarding Duncan Robinson for the first 8 minutes of the game. So the offense did look clunky with Justice Winslow and Jimmy out there. But I think with this team, we still haven't seen the starting lineup for tomorrow, which is funny. Ira Winderman put that out, that the Grizzlies already put out their starting lineup, but we haven't seen the Heat starting lineup. But I think with this team, you do have guys that fit certain roles. So hopefully they get settled into a rotation early. They try it out, and hopefully it works. Because otherwise, we're going to see what we've seen in seasons past, where we're just throwing things out there, trying to see what works.
The defense. Alex mentioned the defense too. And last year, one of the complaints about Spoelstra was the Spo zone. Right? Like all of a sudden there would be zone defenses for long periods of time in the game, and it didn't seem to work very well. And Erik would say it did some good things. How much zone, I'll go to Alex on this, how much zone do you think they're going to have to play with the group that they have this year? And should they?
That's kind of an interesting question for me. I hadn't even really thought about that, but now that I am thinking about it, I think the zone is just going to be something that's just kind of in his toolbox. I think it's going to be something that he throws out if he sees that the defense is struggling to keep up with maybe a team that's dominating in the paint, maybe like the Bucks or something, or the Sixers if Simmons and Embiid are getting their way inside the paint. They're just going to say, let the shooters beat you, let Horford and Jay Rich and Tobias chuck up threes, something like that. It would have to be a sense of urgency from Spo where he sees that the defense just can't contain inside presences that are just, doing damage on the Heat.
Let's go to the two young players here that we were talking about before everybody started talking about Hero and Nunn, and to a certain extent DJJ, which is Justice and Bam. I think we've all looked at the positive upside for them, right? Even on the podcast that we did, The People Here Tomorrow, we talked about Justice in the context of what he can contribute, even if he's not shooting well, even if he's not scoring. Bam, even if he doesn't really develop a face-up game this year, that he's still going to collect numbers just because of his energy and his effort. But is there any chance in your view, I'll go to Alf, is there any chance in your view that either of them just falls flat this year?
If we're talking about Justice and Bam, what I've always said with those guys is if you're a box score watcher, you're one of these barbershop NBA analysts that drive me crazy, who will look at, point, all they care about is points, rebounds, and assists. Yeah, there's a chance that they fall flat. I don't think either of these guys are going to put up 17, 18 points a game, 8, 9 assists, and 8, 9 rebounds. I don't see it happening. But they will always impact winning just because of the way they play the game. Now, do I expect Justice to once again raise his points per game? I would like to see him in the 39% and 3-point shooting. The preseason, I hope it was an outlier. I hope it wasn't real, because we've watched him shoot arounds in practice. He's money. In practice and shoot around, he's money. And then in the preseason, he just couldn't hit the broad side of the barn. But I think that as long as they do these things that they've always done, and they're surrounded by guys like Jimmy and Hero, I think it's going to be nothing but positive for these guys. So as long as we don't worry so much about the points, rebounds, assists, the elementary numbers that we've all grown up with, and we actually look at their impact on the floor and we look at their defense, because I do think this is going to be a top 5 defense in the NBA. And if it is, it's going to have a lot to do with Justice and Bam. And as long as we look at the right things with those two players, they'll always be impactful. Alex?
See, I'm not as sure about them being a guaranteed top 5 defense. I would hope they are. I think they might have the potential to, just because of, the versatility that they have with Justice and Jimmy and Bam, Derrick Jones Jr., James Johnson, Dion when he's healthy. But you're also going to be starting Kelly and Tyler Hero. And I know Kelly's been a better defender than he was in Boston. I know he's slimmed down. He's just decent at getting to the spots. We've talked about it before. But starting Tyler Hero and Kelly together might have, those are going to be the weak spots. Teams are going to go after them. They're going to try to do, like kind of what the Rockets do. They're going to look for the switch, try to get Hero or Olynyk off the switch. And I hope they're going to be as good. As far as Winslow and Bam, we talked about this last night, but again, with them, I think it's about being able to contribute when they actually get the chance. I don't think it's about the counting numbers like Alf said. I think it's about them being able to consistently finish, consistently hit open shots, whether it's Justice with the threes or Bam with those mid-range J's that he needs to start hitting. I would hope that they get better at finishing, like I said. But overall, as long as they're, these A-plus defenders that we become so used to, and they're hitting the shots that are, that they need to hit, I think they'll be fine.
Well, I will say this, and someone actually just came up on the screen talking about it. Hero against the Rockets, Harden, Westbrook, and Gordon abused him. And they did it. They did it purposely. Whoever Hero was guarding, they went after him every single time. And also, that was a function of not having Jimmy in the starting lineup. But listen, injuries happen. And if injuries are going to happen and you can't put 2 perimeter guys that can defend around Tyler Hero, not saying Tyler Hero won't eventually be a plus defender, but he's a 19-year-old rookie. Not a lot of guys come in like Justice and can D up anyone from LeBron to Kyrie Irving. So if the Heat can't find another guy on the perimeter, which we're hoping it's going to be a Derrick Jones Jr. type, that if Jimmy Butler can't start, Jimmy's out, or if Justice is out, if they can't get that second perimeter defender, now you can't start Tyler Hero. And if you can't start Tyler Hero, there goes your offense in that starting lineup. Because that starting lineup without Tyler Hero, and if Dion Waiters is persona non grata and does not come back in the next, the first 10, 15 games, that offense is going to struggle.
Well, I want to get to the injuries in a second, but a couple of good points came across on the screen. I mean, I have a concern about rebounding. We've talked about it. This team's going to need to gang rebound. and they're going to need to get a lot of rebounding. We talked about the big three teams being inverted, where LeBron and Dwayne were doing a lot of the defensive rebounding. Jimmy and Justice are going to need a rebound, because I know Bam's numbers when he was a starter were pretty good in the rebounding aspect, but again, sustaining that over a whole season. And Myers Leonard was a very good rebounder in the preseason. I am a little bit concerned about Myers. I know that you've bought into him completely, Alf, and I have too from what I've seen, and he's bought into Miami, and I like everything that he provides. I like the hustle. I like the shooting. I like the rebounding we've seen. But I'm also a little concerned. The guy he was a first-round pick, and not like a 25th pick in the draft. He was a relatively high first-round pick in Portland, and he couldn't really get consistently on the floor, and to the point that they went out and made a trade for Nurkic, which cost them assets, to the point that they decided to go get, of all people, Hassan. And I know Lillard and McCollum wanted him, but I feel like there's some guys on this team, and I've bought into a lot of them individually, but there's some guys on this team that, like, okay, I kind of need to see it in the regular season over a sustained period, because if you don't get much out of Myers, we know Kelly's not a great rebounder. And then you're talking about, okay, how much are you playing DJJ at the 4? And he's a really good offensive rebounder, but he's not an elite defensive rebounder. So rebounding concerns me. I want to go to the injuries, though, too. I think we're all going to agree that the guy they can't afford to lose is Jimmy Butler, right? And he's got to stay healthy. He has mostly stayed healthy through his career. He had the situation in Minnesota. I don't really believe in the wear problem with him quite as much, because he didn't play that much early in his career. I don't think it's going to be a big issue this year. Who is the guy beyond Jimmy Butler, in your view, that an absence, because they lost Goran for more than 30 games last year, and it hurt him. They probably make the playoffs if he's healthy. Who is the guy on this team that if he misses 30 games, that this team sinks from maybe being a 3 or 4 seed to a 6, 7, or 8? Alex?
I'm going to say it's definitely Bam. I think they're going to go to him so often for, off the lob. He's going to get stuff off the offensive rebounds. He's going to be, setting screens in offense. He's going to be doing so much for them on defense. I think he's going to be responsible for a lot. And if you lose him, you go to probably having to start Kelly and Myers Leonard together or something like that, some type of combo like that, just to make up for the size. And I don't love that either. You definitely can't start Hero if you're starting Kelly and Myers together. But if they lose Bam for more than a few games, it can get ugly. I think they have the coaching in the front office to keep the team together, where they won't just completely collapse. But like I said, if it's more than 5 games that they lose Bam, 5-10 games, that defense could go down the drain, and at least the interior defense, right? And they're going to be even more susceptible to what I was talking about before, the switches, right? And I just think Bam is they've already doubled down on him by trading Hassan, but now they especially can't lose him because of Kelly and Myers being their backups. Those are guys that you want to play alongside Bam, not without Bam. That's why I think, this is kind of random, but speaking of, the rebounding part that you were talking about, and just the fact that they lack some type of size versus teams like Philly and Milwaukee, they should probably try to go after somebody like Marc Gasol or something like that, somebody that you can play alongside Bam and who you can throw into those big lineups if you ever need to, because Bam is your one big guy who you can throw into all of these lineups, right? You can only play him so many minutes a game.
And you talk about Milwaukee. If everybody talks about how big Philadelphia is, right, and they're huge. I mean, Josh is going to be the smallest guy on the floor for them, with Ben and Tobias and Embiid and Horford. That's a huge team. Yep. Milwaukee, though, if they play the Lopez, brothers together with Giannis in the front court, I mean, the size, and then with Giannis's length that you're dealing with in the front court, and Bledsoe's length. I know Bledsoe's not tall, but his length, that's going to be a difficult matchup for them too. And so I guess, Alf, going to you on this, I mean, it's got to be Bam, right? Because I feel like if they lose Justice, they lose something. They put, maybe they won't put Goran in the starting lineup. Maybe Kendrick Nunn becomes, that's probably what Spoelstra would do. He'd probably put Kendrick Nunn in the starting lineup and let Goran play 32 minutes off the bench. Like, I feel like everybody else on this team, they could replace with somebody. I think it's harder if Dion is not, and Dion and JJ are not available to them, because then they do start to get thin. But I think if they lose Bam, I think you're sinking in the standings with everything else that they have.
Yeah, I was going to say Bam, just like Alex said, because one of the things, Miami has this luxury of 2 quote-unquote stretch 5s, right? They have Olynyk and they have Myers Leonard. It's stretch 5, stretch 4, whatever position you want to call them. The reason they have that luxury is because Bam cleans up mistakes. on the defensive end. And without Bam, those lineups, that can't work for 48 minutes. But since Alex brought up Bam, the other guy that I'm going to say is Goran Dragic. If Goran Dragic misses 25, 30 games, one of the things that I looked at when I looked at this team coming in is that their depth was incredible, right? They had 5 guys coming off the bench that could start for a middling Eastern Conference team, right? If you take Goran Dragic out of that, you've already lost Dion Waiters, maybe, who knows how long. James Johnson hasn't played a preseason game yet. So now we're looking at a bench of Kendrick Nunn, Myers Leonard, Derek Jones Jr., Duncan Robinson. It doesn't feel as good as it used to, right? When I start saying these names. So an extended absence of Goran Dragic, because the entire time in the preseason, he has been a cheat code off the bench, an absolute cheat code, because him against other second units is not really fair. It's not fair. And him and Dion against other second units was going to be really, really unfair. Him, Dion, DJJ, Kelly Olynyk, whether you put Duncan Robinson, KZ Okpala, when you start putting those second units together against other teams' benches, they were starting to be overwhelming. Now, without Dion, without JJ, if Goran misses extended time, what was the strength this offseason coming in, which was the Miami Heat's depth, will all of a sudden turn into a weakness. So I know a lot of people are out there. They're not the biggest fan of Dion Waiters. Maybe they're not the biggest fan of James Johnson. But I don't think people are realizing how potent that bench was going to be without the losses of those 2 guys. That's why I dropped them from a 3rd to a 5th or 6th seed in my preseason prediction. I went from 49 wins to about 46, 45 because I believe those guys are really, really that important off the bench. And I know everyone's going to be like, oh, you believed in these guys again. It's not about believing in them. I do believe in them because, listen, I've seen them play well, but it was what they were going to be able to do against other teams' benches that really got me excited about this season.
Well, and we've got our Slim, posting here that Nunn can run the second unit, and he can.
But listen, Ethan, I'm sorry. We've done this so many times, and I like Kendrick Nunn.
I know
we've met Kendrick Nunn. I listen, and I like the kid, but let's not go crazy with preseason superstars, man.
I understand that, but as I said on the pod that people will hear tomorrow, and as you'll hear when me talking to Eric Reed about this, there's something different about Kendrick Nunn in this sense. He has not had a bad game yet, and I think we talk about Gerald Green. Let's put the Gerald Green experience aside. I think everybody knew when they were watching.
I'm scarred. I'm scarred, man.
But that
it's
was
more than
just
just Gerald Green, right?
Green preseason. Like we knew what we were seeing there when we watched it. But there are certain guys that you identify in the preseason, and it starts to translate. And I think, again, I'm gonna trust the evaluators inside the organization who have basically been saying all along. Like when I was at Summer League, they were saying this kid's going to be in the rotation this year. In Summer League, he hadn't played a preseason game yet. And then he went out there and validated all of it, even before the 40-point game. But I do agree with you about this, okay? I think one of the things Heat fans have underrated about last season, and I don't want to make excuses for the Heat last year. That was a total disaster and mess, okay? And we didn't find a rotation the whole year, and it was all about Dwayne, which was fine. It should have been, but it didn't seem like it was about anything else, and they didn't want to piss off Whiteside, so they continued to start him, even though when other people in the organization wanted to start Bam, it was a disaster. But one thing nobody talks about is all the time Goran missed. And they make the playoffs if he doesn't miss that time. Like, it's just that simple. And I think people have forgotten how dynamic he can be.
And it was the same thing with Dion 2 years before.
Yes.
Dion, but with Goran doesn't subtract from anybody else. The difference between the two of them, other than obviously temperament and sort of maturity, right, which is what we've seen in the way they both accepted this. One's accepted the role and the other hasn't. I mean, let's be honest. Everything that has happened this preseason, we predicted, right? We knew.
Who knew Dion was going to have trouble coming off the bench? Who knew?
Right. We said all along that Goran and Dion they were trying to target them for the bench roles, and that Goran would probably accept it and Dion probably wouldn't. And that's exactly what happened. So let's go to this before we close. All right. Could this situation, the Dion Waiters situation, on its own? I know we devoted 35 minutes to it today on a podcast, but just this particular topic, on its own, could the Dion Waiters situation in some way sink the Heat this year? Is there any chance of that it becomes such a distraction that it feeds into the rest of the program that they've got here, and it actually costs them games. Alex.
So I think in a way, yes, I think it lowers their ceiling, right? I've already alluded to this before, but if Dion isn't there coming off the bench and just generally being a solid role player, somebody who can come in and be a decent defender, decent playmaker, decent shot maker, I think that definitely lowers the ceiling a little bit. I don't think it's going to hinder them to the point of getting out of that tier, between the 3 and 6 or 7 seed. But yeah, I think they need to kind of get that fixed. And just another thing. Would you say Kendrick Nunn is like a first-round pick? Is he our new like a first-round pick?
That's the new Derrick Jones Jr.
Right. He's their Preston Williams, right? Like that's the comp with the Dolphins. I mean, a kid who, if he hadn't had one issue in college, probably ends up getting drafted late first round, which is crazy, similar to Preston Williams. And they haven't described him that way to me, but that is how they're looking at it. And if you look at it, everybody talks about they need to accumulate draft picks. If Derrick Jones Jr. and Kendrick Nunn have long, productive careers for the Heat, they didn't need the draft picks. Alf, the Dion situation, beyond the play stuff, which, they're going to miss this from him or that from him or whatever, but just having this hanging over an organization. Like, when I've talked to people in there, they said getting rid of Hassan Whiteside was worth 5 to 7 wins. Just getting him off the roster was worth 5 to 7 wins because it cleared everybody's heads and they could play Bam more and they didn't have this distraction and someone poisoning everybody else in that room. Do you think that Dion Waiters just being unhappy, not the play, not losing his skill set, but being unhappy costs them games this year?
No, these are all professionals. It's not Jimmy Butler being unhappy or Dwayne Wade last year being unhappy. I love Dion. I want him to excel, but he isn't the most important player on this team. So him being unhappy, I really feel like a lot of guys can just look at him like, well, anyway, we're going to keep going forward, whether you're with us or not. I could imagine being a Heat player right now, looking at Dion Waiters and saying, bro, Goran Dragic is a year off of being an all-star. He's already accepting his bench role. Dwayne Wade, the pillar of this franchise, the guy who basically built this organization, he came off the bench last year. If you're going to be so selfish that you can't come off of the bench for this organization, I wonder if the other guys, and listen, I'm not calling Dion selfish. I'm saying what the other guys on the team might think. If they see that, maybe they've already mentally moved on. I mean, they like hanging out with the guy, they like seeing him in practice, but they might have already mentally moved on. I do think it's going to hurt the win-loss record for this year unless Kendrick Nunn is real. I hope he's real, but if he's not real and if he still needs some grooming, I do think it's going to hurt it. But as far as the team, as far as the roster, as far as the players, I think, listen, this team has, for the first time in a few years, 10, 12 professionals, complete professionals, where none of this other crap is going to bother them. And I think they're just going to keep moving forward.
I'm laughing because at 5 Reasons we don't have all professionals, and I'm reading Slim's text here at the bottom, which says Dion throws soup at Chris Quinn, which I don't think that's actually going to happen. But
it's the best prediction all night.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Slim, for the contribution. The only other thing I'll say about the Dion situation here is, if they don't get anything out of him and they end up moving him, it's still possible. I think he has enough value that they will get somebody who will help the depth also, right? So, let's say it's
Galloway.
Well, I mean, look, in small doses, a Langston Galloway, a Tony Snell can help you, right? I'm not saying that they're going to get an elite bench player, but I think they will get some kind of a contributor for him. What they're missing without him is I thought he'd be the second leading scorer on this team at one point. He's a guy who can create. And so I didn't think it was going to be high efficiency, but he can create. He can make a three. He can set up others. He's not a bad passer, and he's not a bad defender when he's engaged. So they're going to miss him from a talent standpoint, but also we're also talking about him like he's dead. They might solve this 3 days into the season, right? And he might not like it, but he might start to play pretty well and have an 18-point game off the bench and suddenly begin to accept it. All right, final thing here. Worst case scenario collectively, okay? I think I have him at 47. Alex, you have him at how many?
46 wins.
All right, Alf.
I think I said 45, 46.
All right. So, what is the low bar here? Okay, let's say Jimmy misses 20 games. Okay, Bam misses 15 games.
Oof.
How
gonna be tough.
bad could this be? Is mid-30s, high 30s?
No, there's
40-win team.
I think 42. I think 40, 41, 42 wins is the low bar for this team and an A seed. I think they're going to figure out a way to get into the playoffs. Like there's absolutely no way this organization is missing the playoffs this year. I mean, if they have to drag Dion out there,
sign Melo.
if they have to sign Melo, Jamal Crawford
out there, actually, yeah.
Dwayne might have to come back.
Well, there aren't enough teams competing, right? How many teams in the East are just not competing? The Knicks, okay. Charlotte.
Well, the Knicks have more power forwards.
I don't throw the Hawks in there. No. I think the Hawks can make the playoffs. The Knicks, Cleveland. I think the Hawks can make the playoffs. The Knicks, I don't think they're ready, but I think they could. The Knicks, Cleveland, Charlotte, right? No chance, right? No chance for those three.
No way.
Okay. Anybody else? So you're talking about 12 teams sort of competing. I don't love Orlando, but I know they made the playoffs last year. I don't love Detroit. Blake's hurt already, but I know they made the playoffs last year. Who am I missing that potentially could drop out? I don't think Toronto drops out completely unless they trade Lowry. I don't think Indiana drops out and they signed Sabonis today. I don't know if they drop out unless Oladipo doesn't play the whole year. Chicago, any chance?
No, Chicago's not a playoff team.
I think Chicago's going to be better than Atlanta.
And I think you're wrong.
I love Trae Young, right? I love Trae Young. I love John Collins. I just think they're going to be a terrible defense. And not that the Bulls are going to be a great defense. I just think the Bulls, you look at their rotation, 1 through 10, they've got a lot of guys who can play. Whereas the Hawks is like, you got Trae Young and John Collins, and Trae Young was like the worst defender in the league last year. And the rest of the guys playing are rookies. They let veterans walk in the free agency. I don't think that's a team that's going to make the playoffs.
He's the worst defender I saw in preseason. So
Washington, guys. Washington.
There we go.
Washington might be the worst team in the league.
You tweeted out Washington's starting lineup, and I thought you made up 4 of the names. I was like, "There's no way."
Bradley Beal decided to hold himself prisoner. I don't understand it. Like it's Bradley Beal and a bunch of 12 men.
They saw what happened with China, and he had to get the bag. The China thing had to, the China thing ruined the Bradley Beal stuff for the Heat, at least for this year.
Daryl Morey basically kept Bradley Beal for Miami. Essentially, that's what he did with that.
He must really love DC. He loves DC. In a winter league, he loves living in Washington D.C.
Why? You just saw him win the championship at the WNBA.
He likes coats, I guess. He just likes jackets. He's a big jacket.
So they're not missing the. So guys, they're not. The end of this. They're not missing the playoffs, right? I mean, there's so many bad teams in the Eastern Conference.
No, they're not missing the playoffs. I think that's why I want Goran playing 18, 20 minutes a game. I really I want these guys healthy for the playoffs. I don't want this situation where Goran's hobbled coming in. I think Goran's a big part of this team. So yeah, as long as they make the playoffs, I think they got second round talent in them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think worst case scenario to me is 7 or 8 seed out in the first round against the Milwaukee or Philadelphia.
Ethan, before you go, talk about the watch party.
Oh yeah, that's right. We got a watch party Saturday night. So we know that there's one game they're going to lose, 81-1. There's one game they're going to lose Saturday at 5:00. GQ's Draft House. That's in Lauderhill. We've got the invitation on Facebook. You can follow us there at 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, we're putting it out on Twitter, Instagram, all of those accounts. 5:00. We've got it's a draft house, so the beer's going to be great. But we've got free food there. We've got some giveaways. What we're basically going to do, we've got all these T-shirts and a little bit of. Can I tease this? Smoot's working on a T-shirt as we speak. Harrow and Butler will be out in the morning. So we're gonna have a Udonis shirt. We're gonna have 3 Jimmy Butler shirts. We've got a 5 on the floor shirt. We've got this shirt. We've got You Can Hate Us Now shirt. We've got Derek Jones Jr. shirt. We've got obviously the UD is the one you should get. We've got all of those shirts on the website in addition to our Tua shirt and our Dolphin shirts at 5reasonsports.com. And if you come to the watch party, we're literally going to go online with you and pay for your shirt, okay? Because I'm not ordering them all to get here in the next 5 days. So you're going to go online and we're going to order your shirt, eat some free wings, drink some beer with us, come hang out with us. That's
free food. You should have advertised that first. You buried the lead.
It's on the flyer. Have you not even looked at the flyer, Alex?
He hasn't looked at the flyer. He's a professional.
Every day on everybody's Instagram.
All right, so that's it. And also check out Dutch Valley Farms. Okay, we all approve. We approve.
All of the 5
Yeah,
regions Instagram.
Yeah, and I don't drug test anybody in this network. It's obvious. So anyway, talk to you soon.